Okay, my friends, we're going to stick with the Vince Gironda crew tonight, and we're going to move on to this guy, Don Howarth, who was known as the Duke of Delts, and you could see why just looking at him right there. So it's going to be training delts, and it's a killer routine. It's really a delt specialization routine. But first, we'll cover a little bit about his background, which is a little bit interesting. We won't go into crazy detail. It's not like a full biography, but at least just to get to know him a little bit before we get into the program. Um, and yeah, he did hang out a little bit with Larry Scott, who we covered in the last couple of videos, obviously, as they both were members of Vince Gironda's gym. And there he is in peak condition, and you can see his shoulders are ridiculous. And just looks good all over. Big arms, good chest, shoulders, and maybe the best head of hair in the business, at least a lot of it. Anyway, he was born in 35 in LA. He was the only child, participated in gymnastics in high school, which led to him adding weights to his regimen. And in 56, he met the legendary Steve Reeves, inspired him to get the shoulder to waist ratio that was popular in the 50s. But he was employed in 58 by Western Electric. He injured two spinal discs, resulting in that he couldn't train anymore. Took him 6 months just to get back to mobile and almost 5 years from to fully recover. And then he ended up training first at Gene Mosey's gym and then ultimately Vince Gironda's. And at Vince Gironda's, he put on like 60 pounds in about 4 years. Here's a pretty good color picture of him, which just looks like the color version of the previous picture we saw. So he was close to LA. He felt the pull of Hollywood, and in '68 he appeared in an episode of TV's Wild Wild West, playing a muscular blacksmith of all things. The following year, he actually stopped training, and then that was it. He was destined for greatness, yet instead of cashing in on his fame and good looks, just as bodybuilding was becoming a national phenom, he walked away from it all, never to return. So you won't find any training courses or supplements that he endorsed, or even a website promoting his glory. He got married and had several children, and he was a family guy. There he is, and this is an autographed Mr. America picture, and you can see all around good physique besides having the broad shoulders and good biceps and everything. So as we move into the actual delt routine, I can't remember the first time I laid eyes on his massive physique with those absolutely friggin' awesomely shaped cannonball shoulders of his, but it was probably sometime in the late 80s or early 90s when I read about him in either Iron Man or Muscle Mag International. Iron Man had articles written by Gene Mosey, and then a couple things about Howard's training, and it mentioned fairly regularly in Vince Gironda's Muscle Mag column. There's a shot of the rear delts, which are no slouch by any means. He had good lats, good front delts, rear delts, middle delts, the whole nine. And nice looking guy. And anyway, here's what he said about his shoulder training. In my early years, I concentrated primarily on dumbbell and barbell presses, along with lateral raises to add size. It was Steve Reeves who first brought to my attention the importance of working the shoulder structure as well as the delts themselves, and he made several suggestions for improving my shoulder width that entirely changed my training. Shoulder exercises became the most important part of my program. And you can see that in the program that he's going to lay out for us. There he is again, and good overall physique. That's a pretty cool pose of him right there. He's got good serratus. You can see the rib cage. He's got the little bit of vacuum going on. So here's the actual Wide as a Mile program, and it's designed for those who want to add plenty of size and or just want to focus on shoulder specialization. So it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. He hits the delts and lats together, and he emphasizes that you need to go straight from delts into the lat program. So he starts with behind the neck presses, 8 sets of six, then he supersets one arm dumbbells with incline laterals, and then you'll see. We'll actually just take show you pictures and examples of all the exercises in the program and then some. Now there he is, obviously, and it's not a ton of weight, but you're doing 8 sets of 6, and that's your starting exercise. You probably don't want to go too heavy. So there's the superset of the one arm dumbbell press into the it's sort of like a side incline lateral. So he's obviously doing one arm with both of those exercises at a time, and then switching and going the other way. Um, and again, he's doing like 4 sets of 8 on each of those supersets. Here's a good picture of him just doing some heavy seated dumbbell presses at Vince's with Vince's tank top on. And it looks like some pretty hefty weight there. It looks like maybe a hundo or thereabouts. And then he talks about the 3-way side raises. And here's a picture of it. It's basically going from the thighs up to where your shoulders are straight out, from that position up to overhead. Okay, so you do 5 reps of each of those, and then you do the full 5 reps from the thighs all the way up. Then, of course, as we mentioned, he moves into the 10 sets of 10 wide grip chins, and you can see they're crazy wide grip chins, and that special apparatus that he has on there. And then, of course, he moves into the bent over laterals, and again, very strict. Not a ton of weight there, but you could see how his back is like dead straight. He's like in a dead 45-degree angle there. Doesn't have his he's not in like a half deadlift position. You see a lot of guys get into with those. Then he goes into the rest of his routine, which relative to the shoulders is fairly light. He does 6 sets of front squats, calf machine raises, interestingly, incline barbell presses, which I don't know how you could do those with the 3 other days, in between of doing shoulders, but so be it. And then, he does arms, biceps and triceps. There he is with the crew in front of Vince's gym. And honestly, I'm not sure who all these guys are, but they obviously look like a pretty beefy crew there. And so here's some other stuff that he talks about in the design of this program. Again, the real clincher for added shoulder width is to immediately follow up your shoulder program with lat work. And he says the best for lats and teres major is a 2-arm chin. Perform 10 sets of 10 of wide grip chins to the front and use as wide of a grip as possible. If you can't get out the full 10, then on each thing, then do whatever you can, do halves or whatever, but do 10 sets of 10 something basically. There's a pretty good shot of full body shot of him, and it looks pretty good. There he is with Larry climbing around at Vince's, obviously. Now Larry, he did he won Mr. America several times, won Mr. Universe a couple times, ended up winning Mr. Olympia a couple times. So a much bigger bodybuilding career than Don ended up having. I rest only as long as it takes to bomb the next set, usually a minute and a half to 2 on heavy and 30 to 50 seconds on the other ones. Always give total concentration to each rep. Less advanced bodybuilders can make good gains by following the same program, but doing less sets of each exercise at each session. Be sure to, again, follow the DELT program immediately with the LAT program. And now, this was not one of the exercises in the program, but I'm sure you could mix it in there, as you want. This is, obviously it's going to be a little bit more for rear delts, but, it's like a reverse incline lateral raise. And, you can see in that case, it's not a lot of weight. Always be sure to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep each night and eat nutritious meals all the time. No junk foods. I eat a lot of supplements, including milk and egg protein powder, liver tablets, vitamin Z, C, B complex, multi-minerals, and digestive aids. I eat a well-balanced diet that includes plenty of the big 4 proteins, which he says are eggs, meat, milk, and cheese. And above all, stick to the program and be consistent. And there he is at age 51 here, seen obviously with Vince. Still massive and still looks in really good shape, although this is well after his competitive career, brief as it was. So here's another shot, and it's going to be on the incline doing lateral raises. He's a little bit more weight there. Um, Again, not part of the program we mentioned, but you could certainly squeeze it in there or replace it for something else. There's a pretty decent shot of the rear delts, which awesome, they were also good lats. Nothing wrong with the whole look. Um, and we'll get into talking about he did here he is doing cable lateral raise. So another way of mixing it up that this was not officially part of the program. But you could certainly do that instead of a dumbbell. Some people prefer these. They do have certain advantages over dumbbells in that you have like the continuous tension thing kind of going on. Okay, so he did have at least somewhat of a bodybuilding career. First win was Mr. Fiesta in '62, which was obviously like right after he had recovered from that accident. '67, he won the tall and overall titles for Mr. America, and he also won the Junior Mr. America that year. He had won Mr. LA, Mr. California, a couple other things, and then he quit, as we mentioned. There's another shot of doing behind the neck presses again, but in this case seated. Almost looks like one of the Weeder ad pictures. And so it did talk about that he ended up going in '79, which is, like 13 years later. He just decides to make a comeback at like 43 and was at a Robbie Robinson just doing guest posing, invitational. And that was the last time he would step on the bodybuilding stage. He once claimed that working as a Weeder model never made a dime. And he was in dozens of, or like I just mentioned, the ads and stuff. There he is on the cover of Mr. America, and of course, my secrets for building wide shoulders. What other info would anybody want from this guy? Um, but here he is. He's talking about this is catching up to him when he's older. And he says that he feels great. He wants to stay away from doctors because he doesn't trust any of them. Um, when asked why he retired so soon, he said that why I didn't do the Olympia, and he said because he would have had to go up against Sergio. So he said that was, and he was unbeatable at the time. He said I would have to wait until Sergio retired the way Frank Zane held out until Arnie stepped down. But I was already burned out at that point. I was 32, so it just wasn't going to happen. So there's another good shot, and that's uh, he looks pretty massive there. I'm sure that's about as big as he ever was right there. And I'm not honestly sure if that picture was even right, that retouched a little bit. Anyway, says once I realized I didn't have to spend every waking hour thinking about building muscles, I felt as if I'd been liberated. Asked if he considered the '60s magical. He said, I think everyone looks back at their youth as the most impressionable period. For me, it was the '50s. But as far as bodybuilding back then, if anything, it was looked down on. I didn't like that. People would ask if I was a football player. When I told them I was a bodybuilder, they'd say, What's that? A weightlifter? Yeah, it was kind of, as he says at the time, it wasn't as prestigious as you might think it was. There's another good shot at him of him. His abs look about as good as I've seen him in that picture, but he looks pretty ripped there. And then he talks about an incident where a buddy picked up some stewardesses, and they both went and when they got back to the apartment or whatever, they started out saying that bodybuilders can't have sex. So I said, bring a couple of more friends over so they can take over once I'm done with you, which obviously he was joking. There he is on the beach, another good shot, and you could especially see that 29-inch waist and you know the awesome shoulders. Really pretty girl there. So that's about it for Don, thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you do, please hit those like buttons. If you have not subscribed, I would appreciate it if you did. You'll be helping me out and you'll get a notice next time I pop a video up. So again, thanks, and I'm out.